What would you do if the world you built with your own two hands suddenly became a place you could no longer reach? That was the question sitting heavy in Sarah Mitchell's chest as the Montana sunset pulled the last warmth from the land. Her wheelchair rested beside her broken wagon at the edge of the dusty road. The left wheel of the wagon leaned inward, cracked almost through. She had pushed herself across rough ground for hours, her arms burning and her throat dry. Her stomach complained in hollow waves. In front of her, the sky was painted gold and red, but beauty didn't fill an empty belly. She adjusted the leather gloves on her hands. They were worn thin now, the same gloves she had once used while training colts and handling ropes. 6 months ago, she had been one of the best horse trainers in 3 counties. People used to come from miles around to ask for her help. She had talent, patience, and a way with horses nobody else had. Then came the accident. One frightened young Mustang, one sudden rear, one fall. Doctors told her she had a T10 spinal injury. They said she could still live a full life. They didn't say how expensive that life would be. Her savings, her ranch repairs, her medical bills, her mare Starlight, all gone. Pride kept her going, but pride did not cook dinner. Pride could not open the doors that people kept closing in her face. Now her pantry at home held 1 can of beans. 1. And she had eaten only half a bowl of thin soup the night before. She pushed her hair out of her eyes and looked toward town. A few people had passed earlier on horses or wagons. Glancing at her with pity she refused to accept. She never asked them for help. Not once. She told herself she would figure it out. She always had. But today her strength felt thinner than her gloves. A gust of wind lifted dust from the road. Sarah lowered her gaze, fighting the sting behind her eyes. She wouldn't cry. Not here, not where anyone could see. Then a shadow moved across her, slow, large, steady, horse hooves. A rider. Sarah didn't look up at first. People rode past all the time. Nobody ever stopped. Nobody ever saw her as anything but a burden now. But this rider stopped. His horse stood inches from her broken wagon, its coat shining under the fading sun. The man dismounted with practiced grace. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the easy confidence of someone who knew exactly who he was. His boots touched the dirt, and he came forward quietly, not rushing her or staring at her chair the way others did. She finally lifted her eyes. Carter Reynolds. Everyone in the county knew his name. He owned more land than most towns. The Reynolds ranch stretched farther than the eye could see. People said he could buy half the state if he wanted. They also said he was cold, too focused on business to care about anything else. But the man who stood in front of her didn't seem cold. His eyes were calm, warm even, studying her with something she hadn't seen in a long time. Respect. "Miss Mitchell," he said gently, touching his hat. She stiffened. "I'm fine, just resting." Her voice sounded stronger than she felt. Carter looked at the cracked wagon wheel, then at her empty canteen, then at the tired slump of her shoulders. He didn't point out any of it. He didn't ask why she was alone, why she looked hungry, or why her wagon looked one breath away from breaking completely. He simply crouched down to her level, meeting her eyes like equals. "You're a long way from home," he said. "I manage." "I can see that." His voice held no pity, no slow, gentle tone people used when they didn't know how to talk to her anymore. "You headed somewhere?" he asked. Sarah swallowed, trying to get into town. "On that wheel?" Carter asked, glancing at the broken wagon. She said nothing. He nodded like he understood the silence. "Storm's rolling in behind those mountains. That wagon won't make it another mile." Sarah gripped her wheelchair rims. "I said I'm fine." Carter didn't argue. He didn't push. He just stood slowly, dusting off his gloves. Then he looked at her again with eyes that held something she didn't recognize at first. Belief. "Miss Mitchell, I know who you are," he said. "I've seen your work. You're one of the best horse people this state has ever had." Her throat tightened. She looked away. Carter continued, calm and steady. I also know what happened to you wasn't your fault, but I can see what it's cost you. I don't need charity, she said, sharper than she meant. I'm not offering charity. His tone shifted slightly, firmer, almost like a business offer. I'm offering a job. Sarah blinked. A job? My ranch needs a breeding consultant, Carter said. Someone who understands bloodlines. Someone who sees what others miss. Someone like you. She stared at him. In case you haven't noticed, I can't walk barns anymore. Horses don't care if the person reading them is standing or sitting, he replied. And neither do I. A cold wind swept across the road. Sarah's hands trembled against her wheels. You'd have a room, Carter added, food, a salary, and freedom to run the breeding program the way you see fit. Her heart thudded painfully. This couldn't be real. This man couldn't be offering her the one thing she had lost. Purpose. She shook her head weakly. Why me? His answer came softly. Because you're not done yet. Sarah's breath caught. For a moment, the world felt still. Quiet. Safe. Carter stepped back and held out his hand. Not to pull her up, but simply to let her choose. Let me help you get out of this cold, he said. Tonight at least. Decide tomorrow what you want. Rain clouds gathered behind him. Her stomach twisted with hunger. Her arms ached. Her pride trembled. At last, Sarah lifted her hand and placed it in his. And in that moment, her entire life shifted. The storm clouds rolled over the mountains by sunrise, carrying cold air that swept across the Reynolds ranch. Sarah sat near the large barn doors, wrapped in a clean blanket Mrs. Sullivan had insisted she take. The scent of fresh hay filled the air. It reminded her of her old ranch, the one she'd lost piece by piece until nothing remained but memories and a creaking, empty house. Carter had settled her in the guest house the night before, leaving her alone to rest. He hadn't hovered or asked questions. He'd simply shown her in, pointed out the kitchen, the bed, and the bathroom with its widened doorway, then stepped back like a man who knew the power of giving someone space. Now, as dawn light spilled into the breeding barn, Sarah rolled forward, her wheels humming softly over smooth floors. The barn was clean, organized, and built with care. She felt something stir inside her. Work, purpose, a place where her skills still meant something. Jack Martinez, the foreman, paused mid-stride when he saw her. His weathered face was unreadable. He looked her up and down, first at her eyes, then at the chair, not with pity, more like a man measuring a new hand on the ranch. You're Sarah Mitchell, he said flatly. I am. Used to train the Wilder Mustangs up north. Yes. You caught a double-twist gait defect on a mare that 3 vets missed. She shrugged lightly. It was in her shoulders. Anyone could have seen it. Jack grunted. Not anyone. He folded his arms, studying her closer. Mr. Reynolds said you're looking at the breeding program. Only if you'll show me around. Quote, Jack hesitated, then stepped aside. Come on, then. He walked slower than usual, she noticed. Not obvious, not exaggerated, just enough for her wheels to keep pace without strain. It was the first quiet kindness she'd had in months. They stopped at the first stall, where a large black mare lifted her head. Midnight's lady. Sarah recognized the bloodline instantly. Strong, proud, heavy in the belly. She's carrying big, Sarah said. Jack's eyebrows lifted. How'd you see that fast? She's shifting her weight every few minutes. And look at her spine. Dips lower than it did last season. You knew her last season? Sarah nodded. I helped train one of her colts 2 years back. She rolled closer and tapped the mare's side gently. Midnight's lady flicked her ear, relaxed, and leaned toward her. She trusts easy, Sarah said, but she's restless. She's carrying twins. Jack froze. Twins? You sure? Quote, positive. Jack let out a low whistle. We lost a mare last year because we didn't catch the twins early. Quote, Sarah made a note in the small notebook Carter had left her on the desk. Her hands moved fast, steady, practiced, "Move her to the front stall," Sarah said. "We'll need eyes on her around the clock." "We?" Jack asked. "If you want her alive," Sarah replied, looking him dead in the eye, "you'll need me here." Jack studied her again. Then, slowly, he nodded. Carter walked in, just as Jack started giving orders to the ranch hands. He watched quietly, not interrupting, not taking over. When Jack walked off, Carter stepped closer. "You work fast," he said with a small smile. "Horses don't wait," she replied. His smile widened, but he kept his distance, respectful of her space as always. "Breakfast is ready in the main house," he said. "I should stay here," she said. "Midnight's lady needs monitoring." "Mrs. Sullivan can bring your breakfast here," he replied. "And I'll take the morning watch while you eat." "You?" she said, surprised. "I've watched my share of mares," he said, "and I know how to follow instructions." Quote. She wasn't sure if he meant her instructions or someone else's, but the warmth in his voice made her chest tighten. Hours passed. Sarah watched mares, examined pedigrees, scribbled notes, and designed small adjustments to the foaling pens. Each moment reminded her of the person she used to be, skilled, steady, useful. For the first time in months, her wheelchair felt like a tool, not a sentence. By late afternoon, the ranch hands stopped glancing at her chair. They only asked questions about mares and diets and bloodlines. She answered everyone. When she rolled outside to breathe in the cool air, she saw Carter tightening a gate latch near the paddock. He looked up at her, pushing his hat back a little. "You look tired," he said. "I feel alive," she replied simply. He walked toward her, stopping at a respectful distance. "There's something I want to show you." She narrowed her eyes. "What now?" "A small surprise. You might like it." "I don't like surprises." He smiled softly. "You might like this one." He led her behind the barn to where a carriage waited. Not just any carriage, one built with hand controls, ramp access, and reinforced suspension. Her breath caught. "You built this," she whispered. "Had it made," he said. "You shouldn't be stuck in one part of the ranch. You should go everywhere I can go." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "Why would you do this for me?" Carter stepped closer, his voice deep and gentle. "Because you deserve to move through the world without barriers. And because I see who you are, not what you lost." The wind stilled. The world quieted. Her heartbeat thumped loud in her ears. She wasn't sure if she should speak, or breathe, or run, or cry. All she knew was that no one, not one person since the accident, had looked at her the way Carter Reynolds was looking at her now. Like she mattered. Like she was still whole. Like she was still someone worth fighting for. "Try it," he said softly. "I built it for you." With shaking hands, Sarah wheeled toward the ramp. For the first time since the accident, she felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. The wind carried the smell of early spring across the Reynolds ranch as Sarah guided her custom carriage along the ridge. The sun cast long shadows over the hills, and from this height she could see the entire ranch. Herds grazing, foals stretching their long legs, ranch hands moving from paddock to paddock. She felt something swell in her chest, something she had almost forgotten, a sense of belonging. Carter rode beside her on Thunder's Pride, matching the pace of the carriage with ease. His eyes followed her more than the trail, as if making sure she was still safe, still steady, still there. "You handle that carriage like you were born in it," he said. Sarah smiled softly. "I didn't think I'd ever drive anything again." "Then I'm glad I could give you that back." She swallowed hard, her hands tightening on the reins. "You've given me more than you realize." They rode in silence for a while, the kind that felt warm instead of awkward. But everything changed when they returned to the ranch yard. A man in a gray suit stood waiting by the main house steps, his posture stiff, his expression cold as winter ice. Richard Reynolds, Carter's uncle. One of the trustees. Sarah felt her stomach fall. Carter dismounted with a tense jaw. "Uncle Richard, you could have sent a letter. I needed to see this with my own eyes." Richard's gaze swept the ranch, then landed on Sarah's carriage. "So it's true." "What's true?" Carter asked sharply. "That you've rewritten the ranch's operations around a woman who—" Richard hesitated, choosing his words with precision, "who cannot fulfill the public role expected of someone by your side." Sarah's heart clenched. Her fingers froze on the reins. Carter stepped closer to his uncle. "This ranch is stronger than it has ever been." "Because of her?" Richard's tone cut through the air. "Yes," Carter said. No hesitation. Richard's jaw tightened. "Then you give me no choice. The trustees will freeze the accounts. No payroll. No feed. No capital for breeding contracts. Until you come to your senses." Sarah felt the air leave her lungs. She turned her wheelchair away slightly, not wanting Carter to see the pain in her eyes. "Don't do this," Carter warned. "Then end this nonsense," Richard said. "Let her go, or you will lose everything your father built." Carter laughed once, dark and humorless. "You overestimate how much I care about old men's approval. And you underestimate how fast a ranch can fall apart without funding." The words struck like blows. Sarah wheeled forward slowly. "Carter, please." He turned toward her, wounded by the fear in her voice. "Don't. I won't be the reason you lose the ranch," she whispered. "I won't." Richard's eyes glinted with satisfaction. "She's the only obstacle here." Carter's voice broke. "Sarah, don't listen to him." But she was already backing away, rolling toward the guest house, toward her packed bags, toward the life she thought she'd escaped. I should go," she whispered, her heart shattering. "This ranch is your legacy. I won't destroy it." Carter took a step toward her. "Sarah, stop." She didn't stop. She couldn't. If she did, she wouldn't have the strength to leave. That evening, the guest house felt colder than the storm that once brought her here. Her bags sat by the door. Her hands trembled on the wheels of her chair. A knock sounded. Then Mrs. Sullivan burst in, carrying a thick leather portfolio. "You're not going anywhere," the housekeeper declared. Sarah blinked. "What is?" "These," Mrs. Sullivan said, slapping the documents on the table, "are letters your father-in-law wrote before he died." Sarah froze. "My what?" "Carter's father," Mrs. Sullivan corrected with a sniff. "Though, if he were here, he'd be calling you daughter already." Carter appeared in the doorway behind her, breathless, as if he'd run the whole ranch trying to find her. Mrs. Sullivan opened a yellowed letter and handed it to him. "Read." Carter read aloud, voice shaking. "My son has full authority over ranch management. Trustees may review finances, but they cannot dictate his personal choices, hiring decisions, or relationships. The ranch must grow through innovation, not outdated expectations." Sarah's breath caught. There were more letters, more documents, every single one confirming the same thing. The trustees had no power to force Carter's hand, no power to freeze the ranch's funds, no power to tear them apart. Carter looked up at her, his chest rising with emotion. "They can't take the ranch from me," he said. "They can't take you from me." Her heart cracked wide open. "But I didn't want to be the reason." "You are the reason this ranch is succeeding," he said, crossing the room in 3 long strides. "You saved Midnight's lady. You rebuilt the bloodlines. You gave this place a future." He knelt in front of her wheelchair, eyes burning with truth. "And you saved me." Sarah covered her mouth as tears surged forward. "I'm not letting you go," Carter said. "Not for my uncle, not for society, not for anyone." "Carter," she whispered. He took her hands gently. "Stay," he whispered. "Stay with me. Stay on this ranch. Stay in my life." Her tears fell freely now. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, I'll stay." Weeks later, the barn was filled with wildflowers and soft lantern light. Horses leaned from their stalls, watching with calm eyes as Judge Matthews cleared his throat. Carter stood in front of Sarah, not towering over her, but kneeling so they met at the same height, equal partners. "By the power vested in me," the judge proclaimed, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Carter cupped her face gently and kissed her, deep and sure, while ranch hands cheered and horses nickered in approval. Thunder's pride stomped his hoof like he was part of the ceremony too. When Carter pulled back, he whispered against her forehead, "You weren't carried into my life. You carried me into a better one." And Sarah, who once feared she had lost everything, realized she had gained something far greater, a partner, a home, a future, and a love strong enough to rewrite destiny.